Morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Joe and Savannah today. And we do begin this hour with that dangerous line of severe storms sweeping across the country. Overnight, rounds of heavy rain led to flash flooding in the Northeast and parts of the South. In Kentucky, emergency crews waded through water to help people evacuate their homes. While in Northern Virginia, strong winds brought down power lines and trees, some damaging houses in the process, and more damage to homes and cars came from large hail. Meanwhile, in Indiana, calls flooded the Evansville Police and Fire, where reported tornadoes smashed storefronts and tore through neighborhoods. And in Oklahoma, 80-mile-per-hour winds severely damaged this lakefront marina and the boats that were docked there. Thankfully, no injuries were reported. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda has been following the storm overnight. She's in Newark, New Jersey, tracking it all. Emily.
Hey there. Well, you can see the sheer force of those winds and heavy rains with this massive down tree blocking the roadway here, even clipping the car as part of this major mess. Newark among the areas to see record rainfall, making for a messy cleanup this morning. At one point during the severe line of storms, there were hundreds of thousands of people without power as these thunderstorms rolled through, impacting tens of millions of people. In Virginia, communities there facing snapped trees and blocked roadways because of a suspected tornado. In Kentucky, a very serious situation on Monday from flooding. Emergency crews seen wading and trudging through waist-deep water to rescue people from an apartment complex there. Also, a major mess at the airports. Airports now recovering today from nearly 10,000 flight disruptions yesterday. We saw ground delays from D.C. all the way up to Boston, so a bit of a travel mess. The thunderstorms also taking a toll on sporting events. Several Major League Baseball games have been postponed and delayed, and the storms even pressing pause on the World Cup for the first time this tournament. The game, France and Iraq, had to be delayed for several hours, forcing the fans, some 68,000 of them, to clear the stands for several hours before that game was able to conclude. Back to you.
A lot of complications. Emily, thank you. A stormy start to the summer. Let's get a broader view of our morning news now. Weather meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now with a new accessory there. Angie, I know you got a bit of an injury.
I had a bit of an injury. I tore my Achilles, Stephen. I was out for a while, but I'm back with a new accessory, my little scooter, so I can be here doing the weather. Speaking of, we, of course, as you heard Emily say, had a lot going on yesterday, and we've still got some of this activity kind of rumbling through parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast this morning. Notice not quite as many flood alerts up, but still places like Norfolk and just west of Roanoke under those flood watches at this time. Here's what we can expect as the day goes on. Still more of this moisture, not quite as heavy as it was over the past 24 hours or so, but we're still going to see some kind of steady rain stretching up and down the East Coast from Boston down to Raleigh. Notice that slight risk of some of those stronger storms developing across that region here as we get through the day today. We'll still add on some additional rainfall. I think the highest amounts anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, maybe some localized amounts a little higher than that. So we'll watch for some minor flooding concerns across this region. Otherwise, big picture, we look to the center of the country to see things kind of ramping back up. You'll notice that this severe risk will focus across parts of the southern Rockies and the plains today. And then as we get into tomorrow, some of those showers and thunderstorms work through the Tennessee Valley and will yet again have a severe threat across parts of the west central plains. Here's the look at the area that we're specifically focused on today. 13 million people, Cheyenne, you can see Denver included, Garden City, Oklahoma City also included in the severe threat through tonight. It does include those strong wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour, along with the damaging hail. And we could even see a couple of these isolated tornadoes ramping up into the evening hours tonight. By the time tomorrow rolls around, not quite as extensive of a severe threat, but we'll still have the potential to see upwards of, 5 million people across some of those same regions in the plains and the Rockies having the potential to see the severe threat. Otherwise, we've got those heat alerts out across parts of the Southwest, 30 million people included in those. You can see El Paso, Phoenix, Los Angeles, even stretching up through the Pacific Northwest, Medford, Portland, all included in those this morning. And you can see why. The summer highs are focused across parts of the West. Meanwhile, the chillier conditions have settled in across parts of the Midwest and the plains. And when I say chilly, I mean below normal. So we're not dealing with those 80s across many of these locations like Minneapolis, but we're close to it. 77 degrees. We've got 75 in Chicago. Not a bad forecast for Lexington. Upper 70s, still into the 80s for Wichita and farther south. And even as we get into tomorrow, these refreshing highs are going to kind of stick around across the Great Lakes and parts of the central and northern plains. 82 in Omaha, Green Bay checks in at 72 degrees. And then if you're looking for the warmer weather yet again, you can see that arrives just in time for the weekend, Stephen.
Angie, that injury did not even almost slow you down. Look at you. Right,
I can
back
talk
on the
perfectly
horse.
fine.
Got it down. All right, Angie, we'll check back in. Thank you.
Got it.
All right, let's get to the latest now on the effort to end the war with Iran. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is now heading to the Middle East to pitch the latest Iran agreement to Gulf Arab allies. Rubio now taking the administration lead on these talks as Vice President J.D. Vance wrapped up talks with Iran in Switzerland yesterday. Vice President talked up his negotiation efforts and touted key parts of that current agreement, including steps to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. It's all part of trying to reach a full deal to end the war within the 60 days of the preliminary agreement, which would be in mid-August. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us from Tel Aviv with more on this. So, Matt, the initial deal includes the U.S. temporarily lifting sanctions on Iranian oil, obviously a financial incentive for Iran to keep the ceasefire. So tell us about that and some of the other key points in this initial agreement.
That's right, Stephen. I mean, we're talking about some major financial incentives. It's no wonder Iran signed on to this. That's just one of them. The immediate ability for Iran to market its oil for 60 days on international markets. So that actually puts them in a better position than before the fighting, before this attack by the U.S. and Israel. They also have access to, according to the Memorandum of Understanding, $300 billion in reconstruction funds. And now we're hearing that the U.S. Treasury is in the process of unfreezing what looks like maybe more than $100 billion in Iranian funds that have been frozen abroad as part of their restrictions and sanctions. So it looks as though the Iranians are set to cash in. But meanwhile, they have been holding a very, very strict line on these negotiations. As you mentioned, J.D. Vance leaving Europe now and Marco Rubio switching in on the way to the Middle East, trying to get this over the line. The fact is that the statements we've been hearing from the Iranians are not anywhere near what we're hearing from J.D. Vance. They said that they had not allowed in or not agreed to allow in United Nations weapons inspectors into Iran, which J.D. Vance said they had. They also denied President Trump's assertion that all of this money that Iran stood to get was going to be paid, was going to go back to the United States for Iran to buy food. The Iranians have rejected that statement as well. They also said that they aren't going to be talking about their ballistic missile capability. That's going to be very, very upsetting to Israelis who see themselves as a partner in this fight. So already, day two, we're looking at negotiations that are reaching something of an impasse.
Yeah, a lot of questions on those discrepancies between the two sides. But also wanted to ask you, during these negotiations, President Trump seems to continue to make threats against Iran at the same time, saying he'll do what he has to if Iran doesn't keep the terms here. How does that dynamic play out? And what are you hearing from Iranians about this?
It's an extraordinary split screen between what we're hearing from President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. Vice President Vance came out yesterday and started talking about how he's working in the interests of the Iranian people and how he wants to basically the U.S. and Iran want to be hand in hand on this. And this came within several days of President Trump threatening to bomb Iran once again, threatening to destroy the country, which he said on social media. And at one point, threatening, it sounded like, the safety or the freedom of Iran's negotiators in the Middle East or in Europe. So that was almost as if he was threatening to kidnap the Iranian negotiators. It was pretty wild. That was when the Iranian negotiators actually walked out of those negotiations. So that really put the whole process on the skids. So we're seeing these competing, yelling efforts, one by J.D. Vance, the other by President Trump, and it's causing just whiplash for these negotiators.
Yeah, whiplash, I'll bet. And Matt, another key piece of this is Lebanon and Israel's fighting with Hezbollah there. We know Iran has demanded that Israel ends its attacks there and withdraw its troops as part of any deal, but Israel saying it will continue to occupy southern Lebanon. How could that play into this? Could it hamper that permanent deal? And how is the administration viewing that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we heard from the Prime Minister's office yesterday is that the Israelis are not part of this memorandum of understanding. They didn't sign on the dotted line. They weren't part of the negotiations, even if they were part of the war. So they've made it very clear. Yes, they are trying to abide by or trying to please the President of the United States and trying to work towards region-wide peace. But at the same time, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, he's facing such harsh criticism from the media here and from allied and rival politicians who are all saying that he needs to push into Lebanon and finish the job against Hezbollah in direct violation of what he's heard from the United States and the Memorandum of Understanding. So he's really facing an enormous amount of pressure. And so far, it looks like he's trying to, hold the candle from both. I think that's the wrong metaphor. He's trying to have it both ways by fighting in Lebanon and assuring domestic audiences and potential voters that he's going to be pushing hard against Hezbollah, while at the same time not running afoul of a president who he has repeatedly described as Israel's best friend ever.
A lot of potential metaphors and a lot of moving parts there. We appreciate the reporting so much. We'll check back in. Thank you. Well, back here at home, at least 5 people have been arrested in connection with alleged vandalism at the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. That's according to an administration official. Over the weekend, President Trump claimed vandals cut a 250-foot-long gash and threatened long-term prison sentences for those offenders. Here to talk about this and other news out of Washington is NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumback. Gary, thanks for being here. So what more do we know about this alleged tampering of the reflecting pool? Has there been any evidence of that vandalism? And do we know what's going to be done to fix it now?
We don't have a ton of information about the alleged tampering. The only information we do have is coming from White House officials. U.S. Park Police, we've contacted them multiple times. They're telling us nothing. The National Park Service is telling us nothing. The White House is the only one saying this information. And what we have from them is that there are 17 police reports that have been released, 6 arrests about this tampering, alleged tampering on the National Mall at the reflecting pool. The president was going on long allegations about this long slash across the reflecting pool. There's no actual evidence of that. I was down there yesterday. I was down there Friday. I saw no slash there. There were some allegations of people pouring chemicals in. The only chemicals that we saw being poured in was hydrogen peroxide by National Park Service employees themselves to try to kill some of that algae, which, by the way, they have done. In terms of what it's going to cost to get this back up and running, it's already cost them $16.4 million. And that is not even counting what's going to have to be done now, which is a redraining of the pool and a resurfacing of the pool, according to the president. So a long way to go here to repair the reflecting pool. Steve.
A lot of coverage on a reflecting pool, but it's something the Trump administration, President Trump himself, has talked a lot about, Gary. Also wanted to ask you about some other things going on in D.C. NBC News learning from a source familiar with the matter about a new purge that is occurring at National Intelligence Director's office under the new acting director there. What can you tell us about the downsizing that's happening at that agency?
Yeah, Bill Pulte, who has no experience in intelligence matters, has now cut about 400 people from the National Counterterrorism Center. This comes during a major summer of events and threats related to domestic terror here in the United States. Think about the World Cup happening all over North America. You've got major America 250 and Freedom 250 events happening in the U.S. And Bill Pulte has decided to downsize the National Counterterrorism Center. He's got the blessing from President Trump on this one. These folks will largely go back to one of the 18 agencies that are part of the intelligence community, Steve.
Definitely one to watch there. And another question about monuments and buildings there in D.C. It looks like President Trump's name has now been removed from the Kennedy Center's facade following that long court battle. What do we know about the latest?
Yeah, the name came off around June 13th, but this is the first few images we're actually seeing of the Kennedy Center without Trump's name on it. You can see it right there. These are photos from an activist group called Hands Off Our Arts, and they say they're proud to be able to show this to the American people, that it's actually been done. But as you can see, there's still scaffolding and still a tarp there. That has been up since they took those names down. The activists believe that's going to be up until the administration goes through their appeals process, which they've already started, Steve.
All right, a lot to watch. Gary Grumback, thank you. Well, the midterms are 5 months away, but today is Election Day in a few states. Voters in New York, Maryland, Utah, and South Carolina will head to the polls for today's primaries with a couple key races to watch. That includes Manhattan's 12th congressional district, where a crowded field of Democrats are running to replace retiring Representative Jerry Nadler. Over in Maryland, incumbent Governor Wes Moore is running for re-election in the Democratic primary there. On the Republican side, Trump-backed State Attorney General Alan Wilson advanced to a runoff in South Carolina, and he's facing Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette in the race to succeed term limited Governor Henry McMaster. A lot of moving parts on this one, too. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin is here tracking it all for us. Not in D.C., in New York today. Great to see you, Julie. And a lot to get to. So let's start right here in New York with that battle for the 12th district. A lot of people involved here. A Kennedy or a Jack Schlossberg involved in this one. What are you watching for this race?
Yeah, there's so many moving parts here, as you said, and in part because this is one of the two seats in New York where it's an open congressional seat for the first time in 3 decades. So Jerry Nadler is retiring. He's stepping down, and you have a really crowded field. You mentioned some of those names. We saw them on the screen. There's a lot of money pouring into this race because there's a lot of outside spending. But one of the issues that I think is so interesting in this race, different from the other New York primaries, is the issue of AI and tech. Tech is spending big, and AI specifically against Alex Boris, who is viewed as one of the front runners. So is Michael Lasher. They're both assemblymen, part of the New York Assembly. Again, this is such a big focus of the race, the tech issue specifically. I spoke to some voters in this district yesterday who told me that's exactly what they're looking at. But of course, also housing, the cost of health care, benefits, and so forth, also a focus of this race.
Yeah, just watching TV here in New York, those Lasher ads especially, I've seen them almost nonstop. All right, let's talk about the race in Maryland and why we might see sort of a repeat of what already happened there back in 2022.
Yeah, because Democrats are once again boosting the more extreme Republican candidate, Dan Cox. This is what happened in 2022. Wes Moore ended up beating him by about 30 points. This is a very blue state. So Democrats are sort of doing this intentionally. He's going up against a crowded field as well, Dan Cox, that is, in the Republican primary. That's really what we're watching here. But there's also Ed Hale, who's a Baltimore business owner. He owns that soccer team. And so people are really looking at him as somebody who can potentially take on a Democrat in the general. But again, Democrats are boosting his more extreme opponent in a primary. Somebody who's aligned with President Trump certainly will win. In a general, he'll have a hard time.
Fascinating dynamics. And speaking of that, in South Carolina, President Trump has endorsed both Republican contenders here. What's the strategy there?
Yeah, remember President Trump a couple of weeks ago in the South Carolina primary actually endorsed Pamela Yvette, who's the lieutenant governor. He wanted to kick Nancy Mace, who he has disagreed with, sort of to the bottom of that pack. Yvette ended up not outperforming much. She didn't make it past that runoff. So that's why President Trump on Friday said, you know what? That I'll endorse you still, but I'll also endorse Alan Wilson, who she's running against, who is the attorney general in the state. So a lot to watch there tonight. President Trump saying, I don't know really who's going to win. So, of course, as we know, he doesn't like to put his bets behind a horse he doesn't know for sure will win the race.
So you can just bet on all the horses.
Exactly.
I guess that's how it works. And before we let you go, Julie, I'm fascinated. This could be maybe some bellwethers for November. What are you watching specifically?
Yeah, let's stick to New York, because this could be a big bellwether for Mayor Mamdani. It's really the first time since he won last year where he's endorsing certain candidates. He endorsed in 3 primary races in New York 7, for example, Claire Valdez, who is seen somewhat similar to her opponent, Antonio Reynoso, in terms of their platform, both very progressive. Reynoso has a lot of experience, but Mamdani picking Valdez, who is sort of an insurgent candidate. The same story in New York 10 with Brad Lander versus Dan Goldman, who's the incumbent Democrat there. The big difference between the two of them, aside from their position on Israel, is also who chose to endorse Mamdani in his mayoral race. It was Lander, not Goldman. And a similar story throughout in other districts as well. Antonio Espaillat running in New York 13. He's somebody who's been the Hispanic caucus chair, the insurgent candidate running against him. Mamdani throwing his weight behind her. So this is really going to come down to, are the young people turning out? There's been lower turnout than they expected. A lot of turnout last year from Mamdani in an off-year election. But certainly this is going to be one to watch in terms of the establishment of the Democratic Party versus the Democratic Socialists.
The endorsement game alone is fascinating to watch. Julie Sirkin, great to see you. Thanks for breaking that down for us.
Yeah.
All right, now let's turn to the latest in the search for Nancy Guthrie, who was abducted from her home nearly 5 months ago. We've known about the existence of the so-called ransom notes sent to the media outlets for months now, but the contents of one of these notes had not been disclosed until now. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has the details and the latest on the investigation.
For the first time, NBC News is reporting new details about one of 2 notes sent to media outlets regarding Nancy Guthrie's abduction. According to 3 people familiar with the matter, the second note indicated the 84-year-old had died. It did not contain an apology or any request for payment for the release of her body. After that note was sent, Savannah and her siblings posted this message.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That note was sent just days after media outlets received an alleged ransom note saying Nancy was safe and demanding cryptocurrency in exchange for her release. Investigators involved in the case believe the notes are potentially credible, a sentiment shared by Savannah.
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came. And I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. I believe the 2 notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Months later, investigators are still trying to identify this masked man seen on Nancy's Nest camera the night she was taken. The Pima County Sheriff's Office says Google, which owns Nest, has retrieved hundreds of other images from cameras around her house, but nothing more showing anything suspicious.
Almost 5 months, just unthinkable. Our thanks to Liz Kreutz for that report. For more analysis on this investigation, let's bring in Chip Massey. He is a former FBI hostage negotiator. Chip, thanks so much for being here this morning. So even though the details of the notes are new to us, they are not new to investigators. They've known what's in that note for many months now. How do you think that information has shaped the way they've conducted this investigation?
Yeah, Steve, excellent question. And it has 2 parts to it. When they have this kind of information, what they have to do is their first job, find Nancy. The second portion is to protect the case against hoaxes and false ransom notes. And the third that they have to do is make sure that they're compiling all the information that they can to gather that intelligence to make a case.
Yeah, and obviously not an easy task. And as we saw in Liz's piece there, we know Savannah and her family, they spoke to these kidnappers in social media videos, rewards that they offered. Why do you think that that wouldn't bring the suspect forward if that's what they were asking for in these notes?
Yeah, exactly. What happens in these situations if there's somebody that's tentative, somebody that's on the fence? It still requires them to trust. It still requires them to push out of their comfort zone and make a decision. Hey, this is a lot of money now. You know, maybe I should come forward. But they still have to trust that they're going to be okay in the process, that they're not going to be brought into this in some kind of they're part of this conspiracy.
There's so many people that I talk to about this case that are just so shocked that it's been 5 months. It's almost unthinkable that it could be this long with someone like Savannah Guthrie's family in a situation like this. Is that unusual, or is it just unusual because we actually feel like we know this family?
Well, that's a really good point, Stephen, because the world feels like they know this family. It's changed the way America looks at crime. We've always been involved and curious about true crime and that element. But there's something here that's different. The social narrative, the social media is pushing forward, demanding answers from this country, from this investigation. So what we're seeing is what used to be on milk cartons is now coming across our phones. And there's still the opportunity for somebody to come forward and do the right thing here. But absolutely, there's so many different elements here that say, you know, we're looking at this in a new way. Now, remember, just because we don't hear about any leads doesn't mean they aren't there and that they aren't pursuing. This case is still being actively pursued.
I was going to ask you that. There are people who will ask just casually, are there updates on this case? What's the latest in the investigation? And often there's not an update on this investigation. Does that strike you as unusual, or is it just that this is going on behind the scenes?
Not at all. And that's the point, your latter point there. Things are still going on behind the scenes. We don't know what the investigators are working with. We just got this new, perhaps, information about what was leaked. These things tend to shake the bushes. And that's what we want. We want people to think about, oh, I remember that investigator came to my door. You know, I thought about something else. Or another person comes into the scene and a new photograph is examined in a different way. New technology, new way of looking at the forensics. All these are being applied for sure.
A lot to go through, Chip. Thanks for helping us understand what's going on here. We certainly appreciate it. If you have any information on Nancy's disappearance, please contact the number in the bottom of your screen there, 1-800-CALL-FBI.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.